off with a little game of superlatives, right? I'm going to read some superlatives off, and you tell me which QB best fits this description.
Okay, I love this.
And this is right now, okay?
Yeah.
Most fun quarterback to watch for whatever reason.
For me right now, it's CJ Stroud. Just the fact that he's come in as a rookie and like it's transferred over, the pureness. I think he's reminded me even in the job that I'm in now, like, dude, if you can throw it, like you can throw it. And that's always going to be like the most important thing. His pre-snap plan, post-snap execution is really fun to watch. And just some of the pure spin of the ball is really cool.
I agree. He'd be up there for me too. And I want to give you this. This is more for ammo later for your other job besides coming on our show. There's a person who's not getting any credit for CJ Stroud right now, and he wouldn't want any. That's quarterback coach Gerard Johnson. All three of us know sometimes the quarterback coach has no effect on the success that you're having. They're just in the room with the clicker.
Yeah.
That's not the case. Gerard Johnson, I played with him in Chicago.
Okay.
Done Elite 11 with me for years. That guy deserves a lot of credit. Next one, most underrated.
Most underrated guy right now watching. I'm going to say Sam Howell. I think, it's not perfect, but I think like a couple things with Howell. Two of the things that I did not like when I saw part of it coming out of college and then again earlier this year was like not dealing with pressure well, not having a plan, who's the hot when blitz comes in. Like he would get to the top of his drop in the pocket and just hang out there and very stressing his offensive line too much. So in that regard, I've seen really good growth in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And again, he's only started 10 or 11 games. So that, and dude, he is so aggressive with the football.
Aggressive.
It's so aggressive. It's like, hey, there's a 20-yard in route. I'm throwing it. And, obviously he'll have to learn that balance of hey, when to and when not to be aggressive. But I think his just natural ability to be aggressive and make really difficult throws is not getting talked about enough.
I love it. And I know we don't always know what the call is and what the options are for a quarterback. I watch, a lot of people every week as well on all 22, but pre-snap, who's the best problem solver?
Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's honestly, Jordan, if you asked me most of these questions, I could easily say Joe. But I think Joe has this great understanding. And that's one of the reasons why he plays so fast is Gary Kubiak said this to me as a player when I was with him. He's like, sometimes the bear wins, man. And I think Joe's got that great understanding of this is the play call and maybe we're not going to get to something different. It's not a great call versus a defense right now. I'm just going to do this with the ball, or this is the type of pressure that's coming, or this is the coverage that's happening. And I think he's just got this really good plan pre-snap of I know what the answer is to your guys' question.
Yeah, it's tough. And we played against him last week, and just sitting on the sideline and even watching it, right? Your defense is out there for, I think our time of possession in the first half was 22 minutes to 8 minutes for us.
Yes.
And just the frustrating third down, right? Okay, let's heat them up on this look. Okay, I got my corner out versus inside leverage man. Easy. Yep. Let's throw it 3 and a hitch. We're done. Okay, let's play soft cover 2. Corner gets deep. I'll just dump my flat out for 3 yards. Be disciplined. It's just that wears on a team and wears on a defense, and it really did for us last Sunday. It's fun to watch, but it was tough for myself.
Yeah, it's almost like the ball always goes to the right place. It feels like.
Yep.
The ball always. That's why I for me. I never say make good decisions. I can make good decisions. I can make the right one, and he always seems to make the right decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. The simple way I describe that is you see the entire board.
Yeah.
Right. Just like what we're doing, what they're doing, I see the whole board.
Yeah.
From last year to this year, most improved.
Last year to this year, most improved. I'll say this, Trevor Lawrence for me, in two different ways. I think Trevor came into the NFL with a ton of hype, and he's the best guy since Andrew Luck and all that stuff. And then the first year, well, we don't talk about that, but even last year, there was moments where I would sit there and go dude, you are a unbelievable athlete. Please use that more. And there's been improvement in that. I feel like he's gotten into that conversation of the Joes and the Patrick and Josh Allen and Lamar of 3 or 4 times a game, he's going to bury you with his legs. And that improvement of understanding that I've loved. And then I think he's finally been like realized like how talented he is in a way for me. You know, like he's made some adult big boy throws this season. You know, against
Yes.
going 2 weeks ago, the whole shot to ETN is just off the charts good.
Unbelievable throw.
Yeah, just like that's one of those where I'm like, I wouldn't even entertain throwing that ball.
When you think about it, you're like, oh man, that corner's kind of falling off. Like maybe we throw it to him. Like you don't throw it though. Yeah,
no way, no way.
Yeah.
And then he had this giant in route versus Calvin versus cover two, and he like kind of no looks and rips it versus that driving safety. And I think those, like for me, improvement wise, I've always thought he's smart, but just stepping into the role of like being a guy, being a dude, being a difference maker, being the reason why your team wins. I've seen the improvement in that.
I love it. Last one, the best backup in the league. This because you go different directions with this.
Outside of
We've seen
Kyle?
a lot of different things.
Yeah,
outside of
me.
Kyle.
Of course,
Outside of
outside of me. I mean, the easy answer. Right?
Best backup in the NFL. So many different situations where I could go to with that one. You know what? I want to just take 30 seconds to give love to a guy. How about, I was talking about this the other day, Blaine Gabbert. I mean, Blaine Gabbert into the NFL, big draft pick. You stink. You can't play. You're a bust. You should never. All of a sudden, he's a Super Bowl champion. He's on another team this year that's probably going to contend for one. He's played for, it feels like 10 or 12 years. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that should be celebrated a little bit for a guy that went through some difficult times early on.
I love that answer. I backed him up in Jacksonville. The growth and maturity.
Yeah.
For him, I mean, it's the most I've ever seen. I'm not even talking about football. He could always spin it. He was always 6'5". He ran 4.58. I mean, he was always, you watch him throw in a workout, there's not that many people you're going to write down and say, I like this guy better than that guy in that workout. There's just not. Back then or now.
Okay.
I'm just telling you. And he's fast as shit too. But the maturity, right, was just not there. And then he was in Arizona with my brother, and it sounded like it had been heading in the right direction. And you got to know that you got to assume that Chad Henne leaving and retiring, who was in that room with us too.
Sure.
You know, if I'm going to leave, hey, I recommend this. Plus, he's got the background. You know, it is when you play behind a Brady.
Totally.
Like you're more valuable than not at your next stop.
Yeah.
So whether you're Matt Castle, Jarrett Stidham, or Blaine Gabbert, like your value proposition has increased.
Yeah.
Because you've been around winning. So I love that answer.
I think another underrated answer too was Case Keenum, who isn't necessarily the two, but the three. And I think you've talked about this. I've seen other people talk about it, about how important he's been to that room for a guy like CJ. And I think
it's a great answer.
Have a vet in the room. I think you see it a lot of the times around the league where there's young quarterbacks without a vet in the room. I think you're just putting them at such a heavy disadvantage. You're not helping them at all. You basically there's a couple rooms in the league where you got a couple guys trying to figure it out with a combined 3 or 4 starts, you know, and I think you're putting them at heavy disadvantage. And I think that's a good segue into, we want to talk about some other quarterbacks on the league. And this was your first answer about CJ Stroud, and you watch more tape than anybody, right? So we're going to get your opinions on some of these guys. But when I watch tape on CJ, his timing is incredible. His understanding of NFL concepts is incredible. The way he just throws the ball is like, it's top 10 in the league. And I know a lot of people are saying, right, he's in the MVP race right now, rightfully so. When you're watching tape on him, what really jumps out to you the most? And I was in Houston last year too, and the whole organization and how bad it was last year is, for him to be coming out of that and playing as well as he is insanely impressive. So you've probably watched more tape on him than anyone in this circle right now. I'm interested to see what you have to say.
So 100% he should be in the MVP conversation. 100%. That's not this hot take. Here's a couple reasons why. I don't think anybody's running away with the MVP right now in the NFL. There's guys that are in that conversation. So just to context that point, okay? And I want my numbers to be accurate here, but I think they're pretty good. So they had the number 2 pick in the draft, okay? Houston did. They're 4-4. It's really hard to do. You guys know that. They're 4-4.
Yeah.
He's 7th in the NFL when it comes to yards per game. He's 3rd in the NFL when it comes to yards per attempt. He's number 1 in the NFL when it comes to interceptions. He's like 5th in the NFL or 4th in the NFL when it comes to touchdowns. He's 7th in the NFL when it comes to completion percentage. So like the tape, the numbers, the situation, all match being in that conversation. A couple of things that I find like super interesting that it's happened like so seamlessly for CJ. I think because best pure passer coming out of the draft, we knew that.
Mm-hmm.
The Georgia game carried over when it came to escaping. Like that was the big question, and I kind of said it like there's the guys that are creators at that position athletically, and there's guys that are escapers. You only need to be an escaper in the NFL nowadays. You do not need to be a creator. If you're an elite thrower and an elite thinker, you just need to be an escaper. So that's absolutely showed up. He's gotten himself out of bad situations protection-wise. Number two, just knowing what to do with the ball when number one isn't there, the 1 to 2, that processing that like I know what the defense is and I know what I want to do with the ball, but if you don't do what I'm expecting you to do as a defense, that's shown up. I think his understanding of like how to look off guys and kind of like the pace of his drop married to what the pass concept is and what the defense is doing has also been remarkable. Like if you go back and go to that double move, the stutter go to Tank Dell the other day, he like pump fakes and like sells his body that he's throwing the curl and also throws the go almost simultaneously. Like
unbelievable anticipation.
Yeah,
the corner was 6 yards deep still. Like
totally,
he was back.
No wasted movement. And so
nothing.
And like I think that his pocket, the efficiency within the pocket, and then his stroke is just so now. And he just hasn't made mistakes with the football. He just it's been everything that you want quarterback play wise. He's done.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think the timing and I think what you said the escape thing is a very interesting take, and I completely believe that. And we talk about Joe a lot. We'll go back to Joe. Joe in our game on Sunday escaped 4 man pressures. He knew it was man. It's the same thing, right? Here's my number one read in man. If it's not there, I might not have great checkdowns in man right now.
Yep.
But I know if I get a seam, I'm out. And he did that 3 or 4 times. And I see CJ doing that. And I think it's one of the hardest things to do. Everyone says just go progression 1 to 2 to 3. It's easy. It's right on the paper, right? But it is tough to go from 1 to 2 and find a check down and have a real plan. And CJ has been incredible. I agree with everything you just said.
For the sake of time, we're going to jump ahead to one here. Will Levis, saw what you posted yesterday. I've spent the last 2 years with Will Levis. Getting named the starter moving forward. What do you, if you're the GM, what do you need to see? Because I heard what you had said about him and what's impressive and all that. But looking forward, it's a second round pick. It's different than being the second overall pick from an investment standpoint and a commitment standpoint. What do you need to see through the rest of the year with Will, where you just feel super comfortable moving into this offseason and don't need to address anything in that room?
Yeah, I think kind of some of the stuff that has shown itself a little bit, like that recognition, that's been nice. The different throws, he's got such that talented arm. I think that subtle pocket movement. I'll say this, I think he's smart enough. Teams are going to start to get, clues of like, hey, he wants to push the ball downfield, so we got to force him to be patient and, how is he going to handle different pressures and he had some hots last week. This goes back a little bit to me, and these are always like different awkward situations, but I do think they're good conversations, guys. So I fell victim of this with Justin Fields coming out of school. I had heard something about Justin, and I had kind of expressed like I heard this. I was on with McAfee, and it became like this just whirlwind of like you're an idiot, whatever. And like you guys know, like as you kind of are around more and whatnot, I had heard stuff about Will through the draft process that was so abnormal to what like Jordan, you know him better than I do, but like I had kind of known or expected about him, and you always like cautious of sharing that or expressing that, and heard like, oh, he was nervous in interviews or frantic in those interviews, and like. I would be very interested if I was the general manager to see if that is a reality or not. And I don't know because I'm not there, but like, how does he handle this next 2 months where it's going to be difficult? They might not win a ton of games. There might be struggles on offense. There's going to be some difficult moments. He's going to play like crap. I would be interested to see like how he handles that when it came to maybe some of the rumors during the draft process. at just as far as like, can he be that guy, that CEO of the billion-dollar company? I think that's would be really interesting to pay attention to. And then again, like, how does he handle pressures? How patient can he play? Jordan, I don't know if you've seen this, and Kyle, like, there is a little bit of a hitch at the top of his drop sometimes when he's trying to like get a guy to move. Like,
Yeah, he's pumping a lot.
yeah,
It's
so like
interesting. Yeah.
that's not probably going to survive a long time doing that, So can he be as effective without doing that? That would be something I'd be paying attention to as well.
Yeah, I think fluidity is going to be a bit the name of the game moving
Yeah,
forward.
that's a good way to say
and
it.
it happens with powerful, twitchy athletes. It does.
Yeah.
Whether that's an incredible athlete, like he's a very high end, powerful, like, during draft prep, we do the force output tests, right? Does that mean you're good or bad at quarterback? No, it has nothing to do with it. But he's like the highest force output out of any of the people there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when people that put that, and I trained a kid named Bryson Barnes at Utah, who's not as powerful, but he's very powerful for his size. And so a lot of times that tension comes with that.
Yeah.
And that with that twitchiness. So the increasing fluidity, where I would say CJ Stroud does not appear to be a powerful guy, but he's very, very fluid.
So fluid.
You know what I mean?
Unbelievably fluid.
And so
yeah.
it's a balance.
How do you
I think,
promote
between
that,
those two
Jordan?
things.
Like, how do you get more fluidity, or what's the process of it?
So I think it moves down tension. So you go to these like Elite 11s, where these kids are, and everyone wants to show up and throw the ball as hard as they can. And you can see if I can see their traps through your shirt, right? That tension is going to go down in your body. There's some physiological stuff that goes with that. So not as simple as relax your traps, but when tension's up top, it's going to go work all the way down your body. I even hear about it. You have young boys. I have young boys. Like kids will carry their tension in their neck.
Yeah.
Just not to get too deep here, but and so and it comes from stress and anxiety, but that works the way down your body. So I think with quarterbacks, the first thing we start with is tension in the upper body, and then how they're using the ground. If you're bouncing on your toes and you're twitchy and explosive, then you're going to be off the ground a lot. You know what I mean? Just because you're twitchy and explosive. And so feeling connected to the ground and releasing tension up top is two things where you don't tell them to do it. You have to build a pattern of putting them through, like anything. If I teach somebody, we learn a pattern and execute it correctly, and then we add resistance and to strengthen the pattern.
Yeah.
And then we add tempo, and then we put it in a competitive setting. So you kind of have to go through that process of I go through that process, whatever I'm working with that guy on. But when it comes to powerful, twitchy athletes who can also be tense, that's kind of, you look at how they're using the ground and then tension up top.
Gotcha. That's cool.
But I like what you said. And I think that's a fair assessment of, and I'd say that about a lot of guys too, so the football side of it is over here. But if there's any concerns or issues or things that I come to my attention on the guy side of it, well, I want to see how success and failure, which are both inevitable, are going to influence that.
Yeah.
Because however you are in an interview is one piece of data. That doesn't mean that's how you're going to be when you play. Maybe you're way better than that. Maybe you're way worse than that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fair thing for Tennessee to look at.
Yeah, and I think to that point too, Jordan, I think your play on the field trumps everything, right? I think if there's been guys in this league before who may not be the best locker room guy. I know there can be a few I won't name names, but if you can play, you can show you're tough on the field, you can execute on the field, you can put your team in position to win. I think your play on the field trumps everything on that.
Yeah.
We're going to go State of the Union of quarterbacks right now, and then we'll get you out of here quick. Dan, you're a busy guy. But I saw the stat today, pretty crazy stat, that 10, with Tommy DeVito slated to start this weekend, there's been 10 rookie quarterbacks to already start this season, which is an insane number halfway through the season. I remember my year was 2018, and I think 6 rookies started total the entire year. 47 quarterbacks in all. People around the league, the fan sentiment has really been that quarterback play has been down this year. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but that's kind of the sentiment around fans and around football right now. Overall, just from a quarterback play standpoint, from a decision-making, from an execution standpoint, how do you think the quarterback position is panning out right now?
Well, it's unquestionably the most talented quarterbacking, environment that the NFL has ever had. I don't think quarterback play is down solo. I think quarterback play is being affected by bad and lazy coaching. We're in an era in the NFL right now. It's a little bit like kind of when Jordan and I were getting into it, where defenses are playing with coverage first. Like they are saying, there's no way that we can stop you guys. You're far too talented. So we're going to get you to play in a way that you don't want to. And so, and this is probably 2 or 3 years in the making, and we're seeing it more and more and more. We're seeing more coverage, umbrella coverage. We're seeing more simulated pressures. So, and guys know pressure and answers to pressures. Young quarterbacks know no pressure blitzes and the answer to the blitzes or how to fix them way less than they ever have. A couple reasons why. They don't see it a lot in college because college coaches just want to get as many snaps as possible. So they don't teach them this stuff. I think the second thing is teams defensively are trying to, again, build that umbrella to not allow the big pass play. They're trying to show all these different simulated pressures to, if we can't, the quarterback's too talented. If we can't get to the quarterback, maybe we can get to the left guard, or maybe we could, get to the tailback and confuse those guys, and then they get the free runners. They can't be nearly as physical with wide receivers because they're not playing man as much. So they're throwing off the timing by confusing everybody. So I think that's playing its part. I think the RPO made coaches lazy and bad because the RPO for a while was an indefensible play, and the coaches no longer had to make the perfect play call. I think they had to say, well, here's an RPO and there's answers everywhere, so just make the right decision. And I think the hard part is, and Kyle, I would say I see a little bit of in Buffalo. If I'm just being transparent, is like teams are saying, Josh, you're so good. We're playing this way. And my philosophy is if you continue to play in an offensive way where like you oblige to that, the defense wins. Yeah. You have to at some point go to the defense and say, you're not allowed, you're not going to be able to play that way. Like you got to play the way that you don't want. And so that does mean a little bit more under center. That does mean a little bit more play action. That does mean a little bit more run the football. So it makes it a little bit easier on quarterbacks because it's hard to just dink and dunk your way down the field for people like us. It's really, I can't imagine how hard it is to dink and dunk your way downfield when you know you're the best player on the field and just ridiculously talented. So I think coaching needs to be a little bit more at the center point than the player.
I completely agree with the coverage standpoint too. I think when you look around the league, and I think that's something that no one watching, the casual fan watching the game has no clue that Hawk 3 was the top coverage for 5 years. And now it's all the Fangio, too high, keep everything in front of you stuff. Right. And so the coverage and what the coverage is asking you to do to dink and dunk down the field. And it's a conversation around the league in every quarterback room, right? You go against a team like even the Broncos that we're going to face this week, or a team like the Dolphins, right? They're going to play coverage and they're going to ask you to dink and dunk it. You got to be disciplined enough to do it. It's going to be one of those games, right? Yep. And Jordan, you can probably speak on the coaching better than I can, but the RPO is a super interesting conversation. I think they've gotten way better at playing RPOs too right now. I think when you see a lot of the too high stuff, right? Too high in RPOs, right? Let's just hand the ball off. But now teams are spiking ends and putting nickels in the run fit. And, you want to throw that bubble, but the nickel's going to stay out there until he sees you hand it off, and then he's going to get in the run fit. And so your RPO is screwed at that point. I think I love everything you had to say about that. I think it's so much deeper than just quarterback play not being good.
Yeah, and if you look at the evolution of a young quarterback, so let's say a 5-star, highly recruited kid who's choosing between a bunch of different options in college, the way you become that is by making plays, right? Nobody's like manages the game really well and gets 5 stars and gets invited to the Elite 11. Okay, so you are a playmaker. Then you go to college, and playmaking, because of NIL and because Heisman odds and because it's rewarded and it's exciting and fun, you're still a playmaker and you're starting to learn how to distribute the ball and put the ball in play. So you got playmaking, you got putting the ball in play. But then when you get to the NFL and when you get drafted, you're looked at as both. You can't just be a playmaker and go high, right? Correct. And in fact, any knocks that will be on a Caleb Williams will be on the amount of times that he could have just put it in play, but instead set up the defensive end, bailed, got out of there, and then ripped a friggin' dime across his body, right? Yeah. And so, but you get to the NFL, you have to be able to put the ball in play. Correct. And if you have the ability to make a play, right? I think earlier you had said escape or create, right? If you have the ability to create, then you can do it. But if you're just a playmaker, you can't play on Sundays. Correct. And so through that evolution, and I honestly think it's the same thing with point guards. I mean, Steph Curry led all of college basketball in 3-point attempts at Davidson, right? But there's games now where he'll win because he's got 14 assists and a handful of steals, and everyone else scored that night, right? And so Mahomes is another example. Mahomes and Curry from this take, Mahomes and Curry have mirrored each other.
Yeah.
Mahomes only made plays in college. I'm one of the few people that went to a couple of his games and watched him a ton. And because they'd score 42 points and lose at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And he's learned how to distribute the ball. And so I think in that evolution of these quarterbacks, a lot of times the coaching doesn't, or there's so much turnover, right? Sam Darnold's on his sixth coordinator, so much turnover and around them that they don't, the growth and the understanding of how to distribute that does not keep up with the pace of their need to just be able to distribute the football and put it in place.
And like the connectivity of it, I think is a little bit lost as well, because to your point, so many young guys are so used to making plays and creating big plays. You create way more big plays in college than you can in the NFL, obviously, the talent, right? And so, like the connectivity of it's 1st and 10 and this play stinks, so I got to get it to 2nd and 7, and then 2nd and 7 and take it instead of taking the sack. I got a pressure and it's unblocked. I'm throwing it away. It's 3rd and 7. It's a punt. Well, great, we punt, but instead of that punt getting down to the 30-yard line because I took a sack, now it's at the 40-yard line, and then all of a sudden the other team has 40 yards less to go or 20 yards. So like the connectivity of this all, I call it like hidden yardage at times, like the hidden yardage that sometimes. So I think like if I was going, man, where do the quarterbacks rank on it? It's probably like 4th or 5th on the list when it comes to like what's really going on when it comes to like offensive and quarterback performance.
Yeah. Well, last thing here, we'll get you going. So we have something we do called QB to QB. Our last guest, they don't always know who the next guest is, but our last guest, we asked him a question for our next guest. And so I've got a question. This is from Jalen Milroe, who is one to watch, man.
Super impressive young man.
And so his question was, and he didn't know it was you, but what advice would you give to a college QB trying to make it at the next level?
It's a great question. I think that number one, you have to be very honest about what your flaws are, and you have to attack your flaws. I say this all the time, and you guys obviously experienced it as well with me. Like most guys that go to the NFL don't not make it because they're not talented enough. Most guys make it because they have a flaw or 2 or 3 that they just never fix. They never get rid of, whether it's a hitch in your throw, poor footwork, lack of understanding of coverage, inability to change the trajectory of a throw. And I think the more that you're honest about it and being like, I'm not good at this, and to make it, I've got to fix this or refine it or improve it. I think the more that you could be transparent about that with yourself, the better you have of like making it and then hanging in and building a career.
I love that because I just think that you just described Jalen Hurts. I think that's his superpower, is that he
100%.
fixes things. Going back to, I've known him since high school. He just fixes things he's not very good at.
100% right on.
All right. So what would your question be? And we don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah. My question would be, if you had to pick 3 things that a quarterback needs to play at a high level, I don't care what level, but at a high level, what are those 3 things, whether they're physical or non-physical?
That's a great question, and I am fired up to ask somebody. Well, Dan Orlovsky, when I was young, when I started paying attention to the NFL, I tuned in every week to see what Sean Salisbury had to say. Yeah. I couldn't name any teams he was on. I didn't know how many years he played, but he was great. Yeah. And then that became Trent Dilfer, who don't remember all the teams, and I go way back with TD, but I don't know everything about his career, but he was the best on TV. And you have filled right into that spot. I think you're the best on TV. The amount of times I disagree with you is a very, very short list, and we're all opinionators and we all have opinions on everything. But I think you're spot on. I appreciate you taking some time to join us in the QB room. You are officially a roomie, by the way.
I love it. Deal. I appreciate you, boys, man. You guys are good dudes. Appreciate you, man. And It was fun. Last thing I'll leave you guys with is Buffalo.
Where's the drink, though?
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't do a
left
false
hand.
call with no drink here, man.
Can we
There's
live
a
in the
penalty
world
for
where you
that.
have one? Can you live in the world where you have one?
I wish I did right now. It's a Wednesday, though. I love it.
It's a crazy but true story.